Good afternoon. Today is June 18th, 2024. My name is Atim George, and I am an Archie Green Fellow under the auspices of the American Folklife Center of the Library of Congress. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Ms. Monique C. Austin. Thank you so much for joining us, Monique.
Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. Listen, let us start with your origin story. Tell us a little bit about you, your life, where you grew up, schooled, and so on.
I am the oldest of three. I have two younger brothers, and we were all born and raised in Philadelphia, which means just by nature of our birth, we are diehard Eagles fans and any other Philadelphia team. So I went to public school, graduated in 74, and went to the University of Pittsburgh for undergrad, majoring in psychology. When I graduated, I moved back to Philadelphia and attended Temple University for social work. And I lasted a year. Um, I took a summer internship at NASA in Washington, D.C., and never looked back. So I worked in the EEO office in NASA for the summer. And during that time, I was working with Upward Mobility Program, helping women who were in lower fields get to the professional field. And I applied for a position at the Library of Congress in the Congressional Research Service, and I got it. So I started working there in the education division with the senior analyst. And CRS, Congressional Research Service, is responsible for replying to Congress requests and inquiries about a number of issues. In our case, it was education. I stayed there for about 4 or 5 years and then switched to, still in the Library of Congress, what was called the Automated Systems Office. It was basically IT, probably another name for it now. And I was there for about 3 or 4 years when I decided it was time to go back and get a master's degree. And so I moved to Boston and I went to Simmons College for a master's. Initially, it was going to be a 1 year program, but I extended. And in the second year, I was hired by GAO, Government Accountability Office in Boston. And I worked there. We worked on issues related to public health, issues related to environmental health. Let's see, we looked at why, uh, how America's children were immunized and the percentage for immunization and the problems related to immunization. We looked at a location in West Virginia where the morbidity and mortality rates were very high, and what was it about the environment that caused that condition? Um, and we looked at some other things I can't recall right now. But I stayed in Boston, graduated, stayed in Boston, working for GAO, and transferred to the Washington office. And there I worked again in environmental issues. And at some point, around 98 or so, I got a call to join the State Department in the Inspector General's office. And that was around the time that Jackie Williams Bridges was selected from GAO to become the Inspector General at State Department. I turned it down. Big mistake. And so about a year later, they contacted me again and asked me would I consider, and I said I could be there yesterday. And so I started at the time, that was in 1999, and that was when Y2K was a big issue. At the time, a lot of first world countries thought the sky was going to fall. And so my assignment, my portfolio from the beginning for Y2K was to go out and interview the management office and others in different embassies to see if they were going to be prepared, what they might need, if we needed to get Americans out. We talked to American businesses, what they might need. And I'd come back and write testimony, which people way above my pay grade would give to Congress. So my portfolio at the time was Asia. And so we were in Singapore, Vietnam, Philippines, Jakarta, China, Japan. We were all over Asia. That was my first assignment. And the funny thing was, when I arrived, they gave me 3 weeks and then they sent me on the road. So it was baptism by fire, but it was really, really a very interesting assignment. By the time Y2K ended and things were fairly smooth around the world, I applied for a different position at the State Department. Now, I should say, and I didn't say this, I've always been civil service, and I continue to be civil service. I applied for another position in the State Department, which was called Process Improvement. And that office was filled with nothing but Foreign Service officers. And that was really my first time working with Foreign Service officers. We would go out to see if the embassies could improve their management processes, what needed to be done. Sometimes we would go out after an IG report to see if we could help the foreign service officers improve whatever the problems were that the IG found. Sometimes we would go out in advance. And so we were in Egypt and we were in Mexico and South America, South Africa, and different places. And so I did that for about 3 or 4 years. And one of the Foreign Service officers said to me, you go out for like 3 weeks and you do like a proposal or a mini inspection or a process improvement plan for embassies, but you don't know what it really is like to be a foreign service officer overseas. And he said you need to walk in their shoes for a while. So I applied for um, I think they called it I can't think of what they called it right now. But anyway, it was one of those
Version tour?
positions. Say it again.
Version tour?
Yes. Thank you. That was the position. And I applied the first year I applied, my manager didn't want me to go, so he wouldn't approve. The second year I applied, he approved, and I applied for Nigeria because I knew that whatever it was, I applied for the HR position because I thought I could do that. And it turned out they had someone in mind for HR, but they needed someone for GSO, General Services Officer. I didn't know anything about that. But the good thing about the State Department is they will train you for anything, any language, any responsibility you need. Uh, they will train you. And so I went to the Foreign Service Institute, and for I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 weeks for the GSO course, and off I was to Nigeria. That was an eye opener. Um, because I'd been to any number of countries, by that time, probably 3 dozen or more, but I'd never lived in the place. And GSO, we're we're sort of we're in the management office, and it's almost like being town manager. You do everything that keeps the town or keeps the embassy running. So for GSO, we were responsible for motor pool. We were responsible for American housing. We were responsible for shipping and customs. We were responsible for warehouse issues. We were responsible for procurement. And there's probably something else that I can't think of right now. But it was uh, it was a wonderful job. It was a difficult job, trying to keep everybody happy. I used to laugh because we would pick the housing for the incoming Americans. And of course, it had to be approved by the committee. And they would get there and say, I love my house. They'd go to a party at someone else's house and come back, and suddenly the house wasn't good enough. So we had to do a lot of managing expectations for people. Uh, but anyway, it was a great job. I loved being in Nigeria. The staff, I've had responsibility for probably close to 75 staff, local staff, and they were fantastic. I still stay in touch with them. So, as a civil servant, I was still there in that position for 3 years. I came back to Washington when that ended, and I went back to process improvement. The office had merged, and we were in the M Bureau at the time, and
Excuse
I
me, what
stayed
is the M Bureau?
Management Bureau.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Mhm.
Management Bureau. I stayed there for about 2 years, and the woman who was HRO, Human Resource Officer in Nigeria, knew about a need for a GSO in Haiti. And she called me and asked me would I be interested. And I talked to the management counselor, and this was after the earthquake. The earthquake was in 2010, and I got a call in 2012. Would I be interested? And I said yes. My management agreed to let me go. And so I went to Haiti. And in my eyes, Haiti looked like 2 years later, it looked like the day after the earthquake. People were still living in tents. The locals were still living in tents. The Americans were in some American housing, but some housing had been lost. And so one of my first responsibilities was to find earthquake safe housing for Americans so we could bring more Americans and their families back to the embassy. And this was a tough deal because we were in competition for housing with the Canadians, the Brits, and everybody else. And a lot of other embassies were able to put money up front right away. But there's, a certain process you have to go through at the State Department. You can promise and promise, but you're hoping the money will come quick enough before a local, landowner will give it away to some other embassy. But we were able to get new housing, able to get families back into Haiti, and slowly the embassy rebuilt. The embassy itself, structure stood fine. And I was there for close to almost 3 years. And at that point, I decided I didn't want to be civil service anymore. I had a taste of the Foreign Service. I liked it, and I wanted to keep going. And so they had an opportunity back in Washington where you could apply to convert from civil service to Foreign Service. And I applied. And I was on R&R, which is rest and relaxation, basically vacation, back in Washington when I got a call to come in for an interview. And I interviewed. And when I left, I didn't have a feeling of whether or not I would be accepted. I didn't know. So I never told anybody in the embassy. And I went back.
Question.
Mhm.
Was that interview like the Foreign Service oral assessment?
Exactly, exactly like.
So what did that entail?
uh, they asked, it was sort of like case studies, so they would say, if this happened, how would you handle it? Um, that was basically it. They gave you a number of scenarios. How are you going to handle that? That's what I remember. And I remember that it was almost a day long. Uh, then there was a written part that we had to do. So it may not. I don't know what the actual Foreign Service exam is like because I've never taken it, but I imagine this was something like it. Yeah,
So you went back to the U.S. Embassy in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, without
I
telling
did.
anyone that
I didn't
you.
tell anyone. And then one day, an announcement comes out of all the people who had been converted and those who had been accepted into the Foreign Service. Everybody was on this list, and my name was on there. Um, so I got a call from the ambassador's office to come in and basically, you know, they were congratulating me, but I was prepared to fess up, that I didn't think I was going to get it, and that was going to be my story. But they did congratulate me, and everything went well. And it's a good thing because the management counselor fell ill. Uh, he was the best guy, and he fell ill, and so I had GSO, I'm sorry, and I had the management counselor's portfolio as a newly minted foreign service officer. So that was a challenge, but again, that was just fantastic. I loved Haiti, and I tell people that there are parts of Haiti that are as beautiful as Hawaii. It's just that the infrastructure is so bad. It's difficult to get to some of these places, but there are beautiful places in Haiti. So my heart just bleeds for Haiti today, but there are beautiful places there. And
And
so when that assignment ended, actually, it didn't really end. I got sick, and so I had to be medevaced out. Um, and from there, uh, after I had to have back surgery, and so after that, I got a job in Washington. And I will say that after being medevaced from Haiti to Florida, uh, Foreign Service is a lot like the military. You can't move, you can't go anywhere unless you have orders. And I couldn't go back to Haiti because I'd lost my medical clearance. I couldn't go forward to Washington, which is where I wanted the surgery, because I didn't know anybody in Florida without having a job so that they could give me orders. And fortunately, I knew someone who was in a bureau who was looking for a GSO, and they were willing to give me orders and wait for me to recover from surgery until I reported. And so I ended up in the Intelligence Bureau. And that was an eye opener, but that was fantastic. I learned a lot being in the Intelligence Bureau.
tell us a couple of your lessons.
In the Intelligence Bureau,
Yes.
well, this, everything was, everything is shrouded in secrecy, and everything is secure, more secure than you would imagine. We work in what they call the skiff, and the skiff is basically behind locked doors. And so you had to either have a code or you had to be escorted in uh, to get to that part of the State Department in the main building. Everything that you own, pretty much your phone and some other things, had to go in lockers outside of the skiff. You couldn't bring in uh, anything electronic. You couldn't bring in. But I was still GSO in the management side. So there were a lot of things that made it different being in Washington in a skiff. Everything had to be x-rayed before it came in. Everything had to be cleared before it came in. Um, we we had to order things in a certain way. We had to use our procurement card in a certain way. So uh, it was almost like secret agent somehow in the management bureau, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And from there, after that assignment ended, I went to international conference. office. And from there, I managed conferences where Americans are going out to represent the US for different conferences. So let's see, we went to we managed conferences in Peru, we managed conferences in South Africa, we managed conferences, and what we had to do was to clear the Americans that were going to speak because they weren't part of the State Department, but they were professionals in different areas. So we had to clear them, get their accreditation. Uh, we had to get the housing, the hotels for the Americans, transportation for them, and we set up what they called kind of like a conference room or a clearance area where they could come and get on the computer or make phone calls if they had to. And it was just cleared Americans. There were some local staff that we needed for support, especially for language. That was really interesting. And probably one of the best things we did was UNGA, which is UN General Assembly in New York. And the first time we managed the UNGA Congress for the US mission to the UN in New York, I had a chance to meet President Obama, which was like a thrill. And because we had well, actually, the US mission had sort of a welcome ceremony, and they invited everybody who had been working at UNGA to come. So I didn't get close enough to shake hands, but just as they say in Hamilton, to be in the room, it was good enough. So I did that, had that assignment for about 2 years. And then I had a family with a medical issue. So I knew that I did not want to go back overseas. I needed to stay in the States. So I went back to the Intelligence Bureau for my next, and that was my next and final assignment. And so I retired in April of 2020, just as COVID was starting to hit. And I took what they call job search. It's a retirement class that you take at the State Department, and it's at the Foreign Service Institute. So there are people all over the world who are coming to take a different training courses. And we knew early on that something was happening, even though they hadn't quite started talking about COVID yet. But we could tell by the influx of people um, that something was happening, particularly in China, coming our way. But I retired in April of 2020. And that was the end of my Foreign Service, short but beautiful, fantastic, and challenging Foreign Service career. That was it. That was it.
It sounds fascinating, but I want to ask you to go back to your service in international conferences. The technical experts that you were talking about, the Americans who were going out to speak, were they both private sector and US government employees?
They were predominantly private sector, but some were USG. And if they were USG, there was not a problem giving them accreditation. But if they were private sector, then we had to go through a certain process to get them accredited.
Mhm. So were you sending people, for example, out to the Conference of the Parties for the climate change negotiations?
Yes,
Okay, so you had everything from soup to nuts, whether it was endangered species or the oceans, whatever international issue there was, where there was an international conference, your office was providing logistical and other support.
yes, except for something like the G7.
Okay.
That was a different animal altogether. We did not do that.
Hmm. The G7 being the so-called seven largest economies in the world. I say so-called because it doesn't allow for the second largest economy, which is the People's Republic of China.
Mhm.
But at any rate, it is still, in fact, it's in session as we speak.
Yes.
So do tell me, given this platform, I'm hoping that years hence, there are going to be people, particularly young people, who are watching this recording. And I'd like you to speak to the future and perhaps share your own vision or views of career opportunities in the Foreign Service and speak to our young people.
I have a neighbor who is a mathematics professor at the college here, and I've talked to her students, and I say that you don't know yourself well until you take a challenge like this. That it is a great opportunity not only to represent the U.S. but to see the world and to just expand your horizons. There are people that are we need people who are engineers. We need people who are interior designers. We need people who are medical staff. I mean, all of these folks make up the embassy. Um, we need GSOs, we need management officers. Uh, there's a place, the political officers, economic officers, cultural affairs officers. There's a place for everybody. There's an opportunity for everybody with different backgrounds. And the beauty is the Foreign Service will train you so that when you leave to go overseas or whatever assignment you're going to take, you will know what you need to know. That's the beauty of it, you know. And I say to people, reach out, do some investigation, keep your mind open about opportunities. And the world is bigger than your area code, your zip code, your state, and your neighborhood. And you need to see it. That's it.
Thank you so very much. This has been wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
No, no. I'll
Thank.
leave out the blind date, but no.
Are you sure?
Yes. Well, the one thing, and I mean no offense to anyone, but the one thing that you have to be prepared for is life is kind of like a college dormitory. Uh, you are living in houses, chances are, in a compound where the people you work with every day are there. So when you go outside your door, you might be rubbing elbows with the GSO or rubbing elbows with the nurse or you know one of the political officers. And so jokingly in with the I jokingly say that foreign service is like a blind date that won't end because you see people, the same people all the time, like in the college dorm. But getting away is kind of hard, and so you have to really know how to finesse and manage folks and entertain yourself. That's it.
I think that's sage counsel, and that's a very interesting metaphor. Thank you so very much.
You're
We've
welcome.
enjoyed your wit and your wisdom.
Thank you for having me.